The golden retriever had been staring at the ceiling vent for 6 hours. Nobody thought to ask why. It started on a Wednesday. Patrick Delaney noticed Biscuit circling the living room rug at 9 a.m. Not the restless pacing of a dog that needed outside. Something slower, something that kept returning to the same spot near the floor vent behind the sofa. He filed it as boredom. He had a 20-month-old and a job interview to prepare for. A circling golden retriever was not the loudest thing demanding his attention. His wife Dara was a high school chemistry teacher, 8 years, the kind of woman who explained ionic bonds over breakfast, and who had chosen their home's appliances with the same methodical care she brought to lesson planning. The house was well maintained. The furnace had been serviced in October. The CO alarm on the hallway ceiling had fresh batteries. They had done everything right. Lena was 20 months old, red hair she had inherited from Patrick's mother, a laugh that arrived 3 seconds before anything funny happened, and a relationship with Biscuit that had been built in the slow accumulation of shared carpet time. The golden had been theirs for 5 years. He was the kind of dog strangers stopped to photograph. Soft, certain, unhurried. The circling continued through Thursday. By Thursday afternoon, it had become something more specific. Biscuit was staying close to Lena, not beside her, which was normal, but ahead of her, positioning himself between the girl and the floor vent near the baseboard whenever Lena walked toward that side of the room. Lena thought it was a game. She shrieked with delight every time he stepped in front of her. Biscuit did not wag. Patrick noticed it and said out loud what felt like the obvious answer. He's jealous. He's been doing this since she started walking. He wants to be between her and everything. Dara agreed. She had read 3 books on dog behavior during her pregnancy. Attention-seeking redirection, she said. Completely textbook. That night, Biscuit scratched at the hallway wall near the baseboard twice. Not at the door, not at the floor. At the wall itself, at the height of the baseboard, at a specific point beside the furnace access panel. Patrick found him there at 11 p.m. and walked him to his bed in the kitchen. Biscuit went. He lay down. He did not sleep. On Friday morning, Lena woke with a headache. Patrick knew this because she pointed at her forehead, a habit she had developed after a bump 3 weeks earlier, and said "ow" with the particular gravity of a toddler delivering medical testimony. He checked her temperature. Normal. He gave her half a banana. She ate it. He gave it no further thought. Dara woke with a headache at 7:15. She mentioned it to Patrick while pouring coffee. He had one too, low grade, the kind he associated with bad sleep, which he had been getting consistently since Lena stopped reliably sleeping through the night. They were both tired. The house was warm. January in New England. Biscuit had not eaten his breakfast. At 9 a.m., he was back at the baseboard, both front paws against the drywall, not scratching, pressing, his nose tracking along the seam where the baseboard met the floor, moving in one direction, then reversing, then holding at the same point it had held the night before. Patrick watched him for 30 seconds. Then something shifted. Not a thought. Something below thought. The accumulation of 3 days of wrong behavior from an animal that was never wrong in his behavior. He called the gas company from the kitchen. The technician arrived in 40 minutes. He had his detector equipment in the hallway for 11 seconds before he said anything. Get out of the house. Take the child. Leave the dog. No, bring the dog. Go now. Carbon monoxide. The furnace heat exchanger had developed a hairline crack, microscopic, undetectable, without equipment, allowing combustion gas to feed slowly into the circulation system. The levels in the living room floor zone, where air pooled near the baseboards, where Lena spent the majority of her days on the carpet, had reached 89 parts per million. Sustained exposure threshold for an infant her size and weight was 70. She had been playing on that carpet for 3 days. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The technician, a man named Victor Albano, 17 years in utility services, stood in the driveway and said, "Your CO alarm failed to trigger because the accumulation was gradual and zoned. The detector on your ceiling was reading ambient levels. The concentration at floor height, where your daughter breathes, was nearly 30% higher." Then he paused. Something gave you the call. Patrick looked at Biscuit sitting in the snow beside Dara's knee. The circling, the baseboard, the wall, the 3 mornings of uneaten food, an animal whose nose operates at a threshold no instrument in that house was calibrated to match. Dr. Siobhan Riley, toxicologist at Massachusetts General, reviewed Lena's blood work and follow-up. She sat across from Dara and said her carboxyhemoglobin levels indicate consistent low-grade exposure over approximately 60 to 72 hours. In a child her size, continued exposure at those levels over another 48 hours would have begun producing neurological symptoms. The headaches your family was experiencing were early stage. You left when you needed to leave. Has your dog ever done something you couldn't explain until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. They stayed at Patrick's mother's house for 4 days while the furnace was replaced and the home was cleared. Biscuit slept on the floor beside Lena's travel crib every night. He ate every meal. On the 4th night, Patrick sat at the kitchen table at his mother's house and wrote down everything he could remember from those 3 days. The circling, the baseboard, the wall, the uneaten food. The headache he had attributed to bad sleep. The headache Dara had mentioned over coffee. The owl Lena had delivered with such small solemnity. The CO alarm on the hallway ceiling had done nothing. The furnace had shown no external sign. The appliances had continued operating exactly as they were designed to operate. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never ask for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. The list had 11 items on it. Each one, read now, was obvious. Read then, each one had been something else. Biscuit had been reading the list in real time for 72 hours. They had been explaining every item away. The next story involves a Bernese mountain dog who changed his behavior 3 weeks before a diagnosis no one in the family saw coming. He went back to Lena's crib in the small back bedroom. She was asleep. Biscuit was beside her, chin resting on the edge of the travel crib rail, breathing slowly in the dark. Patrick stood in the doorway and watched them both. He didn't turn on the light. He didn't need to.